He used the house to cover his debts. And he did it so smoothly, so quietly, that for weeks I didn't even realize the floor under my life had been turned into collateral. It started with a sound, not a scream, not a slam, not a fight. A soft little chime from my phone. On a Monday morning when the sun was bright and the coffee tasted normal, and I still believed my marriage was made of ordinary things. New document recorded. That was the notification. A county records alert I'd signed up for months ago. Back when I'd heard a coworker say, if your ex ever gets desperate, they'll file something behind your back. Protect your address. I'd laughed then. I wasn't married to an ex. I was married to Ethan Caldwell, the man who brought me soup when I had the flu, the man who kissed my forehead in grocery store parking lots, the man who said, we're a team, like it was a vow. So when that alert popped up, I didn't panic. Not at first. I tapped it, half distracted, thinking it was a property tax update or some boring clerical change. And then the title hit me like a cold hand around my throat. Deed of trust, secured by my address. Our address. The house on Maple Ridge Drive, the one I'd bought before I ever met Ethan. The one my name had been on first. The one I'd refinanced once, carefully, to get a better rate. The one I protected like it was a living thing. My thumb hovered. My brain refused to accept what my eyes were reading. A deed of trust meant a loan, a lien, something attached to the house, something that could swallow it. I scrolled. Borrower, Ethan Caldwell. Lender, a company name I didn't recognize, something that sounded like a bank but didn't feel like one. Ridgepoint Capital Solutions. Trustee, a local title agency. Amount, a number big enough to make my skin go numb. $212,000. I stared until the words blurred. 212,000 against my home, against the place where my kitchen still smelled like cinnamon from yesterday's pancakes, where my dog's water bowl sat by the fridge, where the sun hit the hardwood just right at 4 p.m. and made the whole living room glow. My hands started shaking, and for a stupid second, I thought maybe it was a mistake, a clerical error, a wrong address, maybe another Maple Ridge Drive, maybe another Ethan Caldwell. But there was my parcel number. There was my legal description. Lot 14, Block C, Maple Ridge Estates. I knew that line by heart because it was printed on every document I'd ever signed about this place. I swallowed hard, opened my banking app, checked our mortgage. Everything looked normal. No new payments, no new drafts, nothing. That's what made it worse. Because whatever this was, it wasn't going through our usual lender. It wasn't going through me. It was happening beside me, like a second life my husband had built behind a closed door, and he'd bolted it from the inside. I texted him, "Hey, did you file something on the house?" No emojis, no softness, just the words. I watched the little bubbles appear, then disappear, then nothing. I waited. I paced. I checked the alert again, like staring would change it. Finally, my phone buzzed. Ethan. What do you mean? My stomach tightened. I typed, hands trembling. County records, deed of trust, Ridgepoint Capital, $212,000. Our address. There was a long pause. Then, it's nothing. I'll explain tonight. Nothing. $200,000 wasn't nothing. A deed of trust wasn't nothing. I stared at that message until my vision narrowed. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. He'd expected to be home first. He'd expected to control when I found out. He'd expected to tell his version before I saw the truth. That night he walked in like the house didn't have a new shadow, like the air wasn't heavier. He set his keys in the bowl by the door, kissed my cheek, glanced at my face, and immediately saw I wasn't going to let him charm his way past this. "Hey," he said, voice calm. "What's wrong?" I didn't answer right away. I just held up my phone, the county document, the numbers, the lender name, and I watched his eyes flick not with confusion, but with calculation. "Babe," he sighed, like I was overreacting. "It's just a line of credit." "A line of credit," I repeated, slow. "Against my house." "Our house," he corrected. And that word, "our," landed wrong, because "our" was something you earned with honesty. "Our" was something you protected. "Our" was not something you used like a pawn. "I needed liquidity," he said, already moving into the practiced tone he used in meetings. "Temporary, cash flow, it's fine." "Ethan," I said, and my voice sounded too quiet, even to me. "How did you do this without me?" He blinked once, then smiled. Not a kind smile, a thin, patient smile. "Because it's in my name too," he said. My chest went cold. "What?" He waved his hand like he was explaining something boring. "After the wedding, remember? You added me. It was for estate planning, in case something happened." I stared at him. I remembered signing something years ago. A refinance packet, maybe. A stack of papers, so thick my wrist hurt. And Ethan had stood behind me in the kitchen saying, "Just sign where the sticky notes are. It's standard. It makes us both protected." I remembered trusting him. I remembered wanting to believe marriage meant safety. "You told me it was just paperwork," I whispered. "It was," he said. "And this is just paperwork, too?" My throat tightened. $212,000 is not paperwork. He leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was soothing a child. "Listen, I had to consolidate some things. Business stuff. You wouldn't get it." I felt something flare in my chest. "Try me." He hesitated, just a heartbeat. And in the hesitation, I saw the crack. He didn't want to tell me because it wasn't one problem. It was a pile, a rot, a life built on quick fixes. "I had some accounts," he said finally, "some obligations. It got messy." "Obligations like what?" He exhaled. "Credit lines, vendor balances, some personal guarantees." My skin prickled. Personal guarantees meant he'd signed his name to debts that could follow him anywhere. "What kind of business debt, Ethan?" He looked away. "It's handled." "No," I said. "It's on my house." "That means it's not handled. It's sitting on my front lawn." He got irritated then, the mask slipping. "Why are you making this a thing? It's temporary. Once a couple deals close, I pay it down. Done." "A couple deals," I repeated. "And if the deals don't close, they will. And if they don't," his jaw tightened, "then we adjust." There it was again. We adjust, meaning I suffer. We adjust, meaning my home becomes the sacrifice. I took a slow breath. "Show me the paperwork," I said. He frowned. "I told you it's fine." "Show me," I repeated, firmer. "The loan terms, the interest rate, the payment schedule, the default clauses." His eyes narrowed like he didn't like the language coming out of my mouth. "You're acting like a lawyer," he said. "I'm acting like the owner," I said. "Because I am." He stared at me for a long moment, then walked into his office and shut the door. And I stood there, in my own kitchen, listening to the click of a lock. That was the first escalation, not the money, not the lien, the lock. He was locking me out of information about a debt tied to my life. When he finally opened the door, he handed me a thin stack. Not the full package, not the disclosures, just a summary page. Loan amount, interest rate, payment, and the interest rate made me feel sick. It was high, the kind of rate you accept when banks won't touch you, the kind of rate you accept when you're desperate. "What is Ridgepoint?" I asked. "A private lender," he said quickly. "They're fast, flexible." Fast, flexible, predatory. I flipped through. There were fees I'd never seen on a normal mortgage. There was a balloon clause. There was a prepayment penalty window. And there, buried in the dense lines, was a phrase that made my breath catch: cross default. Meaning if he defaulted on something else, something unrelated, they could treat this as default too. I looked up. "Ethan, if you miss a payment anywhere, they can come for the house." He scoffed. "I won't miss a payment." "That's not the point," I snapped, my voice cracking. "You already lied to me. You already hid this. You're asking me to trust you when you've been operating like I don't matter." His eyes hardened. "You're being dramatic." And something inside me clicked into place. Not rage, not hysteria, clarity, because dramatic is what men call women when they don't want to face the consequences of what they did. I set the papers down slowly. "How much debt do you have?" He shrugged. "It's not your concern." I stared. "It's on my house. It is literally my concern." He stepped closer, voice low. "Stop interrogating me." I didn't move. "How much?" His lips pressed tight. Then, like it slipped out before he could catch it, he said, "About 400. The room tilted. "400,000? I whispered. He rolled his eyes. "Roughly. That's why I'm consolidating. It's smart. 400,000. And he'd taken 200 against the house, which meant this wasn't a temporary cash flow issue. This was survival. This was a man drowning, using my home as the raft, and not even asking if I could swim. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed next to him while his breathing stayed calm, steady, like he hadn't just tied an anchor to my life. I stared at the ceiling and replayed every moment from the last year, the late nights, the "I'm just stressed," the "don't worry about it," the way he'd started opening the mail before I saw it, the way he'd said, "I'll handle finances. You've got enough on your plate." I'd thought it was care. It was control. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in our marriage. I didn't ask him. I didn't warn him. I opened a brand new email account, and I pulled our credit reports. Mine first. It was clean. Then his. And that's where the truth spilled out like something rotten. Multiple maxed out cards, personal loans, a delinquency notice from a lender I didn't recognize, a judgment filed in another county, a UCC lien against his business. My hands went numb scrolling through it. He'd told me the business was fine. Fine didn't look like this. Fine didn't have red marks and late payments and legal filings. My phone buzzed. "Ethan, you up?" I stared at the screen. He was already at work. He knew something was different because I wasn't playing my role. I didn't respond. Instead, I went to my closet, pulled out the binder I kept from the home purchase, and I started flipping through every document: deed, closing disclosure, title policy, refinance packet. And then I found it, a quitclaim deed from 3 years ago, the day he'd convinced me to simplify the estate planning. My name, his name, joint tenancy, signed and notarized. My signature looked like mine. But as I stared, a chill slid down my spine. Because I remembered that day. I remembered being at my sister's hospital bedside, holding her hand, exhausted, signing nothing. I remembered Ethan texting me, bringing me coffee, saying he'd taken care of paperwork. I remembered him saying, "You don't need to come home for it. I'll handle it." I sat down hard on the floor, because the truth was suddenly too clear. If I didn't sign that quitclaim deed, then my signature had been used without me, which meant he hadn't just lied. He'd forged. And if he'd forged that, he could forge anything. My stomach heaved. I ran to the bathroom, gripped the sink, stared at my own face. My eyes looked too wide, too awake. Like my body knew before my mind fully accepted it. My husband had stolen my house, on paper, years ago, so he could use it when he finally ran out of options. Escalation number 2 wasn't the debt. It was the timeline. This wasn't a panic move. This was planned. That afternoon, while he was gone, I drove to the county recorder's office. The building smelled like old paper and carpet cleaner. There were people waiting with folders, couples buying homes, contractors filing permits. Ordinary life. I walked to the counter with shaking hands and asked for certified copies. The clerk didn't look up much, just tapped keys, printed pages, stamped them with heavy official thuds. When she slid the documents across the counter, it felt like she was sliding evidence. I stared at the notarization. A notary stamp with a name, a date, a commission number. I stared at the notary name until it burned into my memory. Then I took the pages and walked back to my car like I was carrying a bomb. On the drive home, I kept thinking, he loves me. He can't have done this, but love doesn't forge. Love doesn't hide liens. Love doesn't gamble with someone else's shelter. When Ethan got home that night, he acted normal. He asked what I wanted for dinner. He told me a client almost closed. He kissed my forehead like he thought that was an eraser. I watched him, my whole body tight. And then I asked casual, "What notary did you use when we added you to the deed?" He froze for half a second, just a blink. Then he laughed. "What kind of question is that?" "I'm curious," I said, forcing my voice soft. "I'm organizing paperwork. I want to match the binder." He shrugged. "Some notary at the bank." "I don't remember." My heart pounded. "Which bank?" He narrowed his eyes. "Why?" "Because I'm looking at it," I said carefully, "and I don't remember signing." His face changed. The warmth drained. The irritation sharpened into something darker. "Don't do this," he said quietly. "Do what?" "Accuse me." "I'm not accusing," I said, keeping my tone steady, even as my hands trembled. "I'm asking, because if I didn't sign, that's a felony." His jaw clenched, and then he did something that made my blood run cold. He smiled again, that thin, controlled smile. "You signed," he said. "You just don't remember. You were stressed. Your sister was in the hospital. It was a blur, but you signed." I stared at him. He was trying to rewrite my memory. He was trying to gaslight me into doubt. Because doubt was the only place he could still win. "I want to see the notary log," I said. His eyes narrowed. "You're not going to harass some notary because you forgot something." "I didn't forget," I said, voice low. "I wasn't there." He stepped closer. "You're starting to scare me." I almost laughed. Me, scaring him, while my home was chained to his debts. "I'm going to get an attorney," I said, and the temperature in the room shifted. His calm snapped into anger so fast, it felt like a door slamming. "Are you serious?" he barked. "Over paperwork?" "Over my house," I shot back. "Over you using it to cover debts you hid from me." He pointed at me. "You're overreacting. We're married. It's ours. This is what partnership looks like." "No," I said. "Partnership looks like consent." He scoffed. "Consent? This isn't some moral lecture. This is money, real life. I needed to move fast. And you moved fast, I said, because if you asked me, I would have said no. He didn't deny it. He just stared, breathing hard, like he hated that I'd named the truth. That night he slept on the couch. Not because he was ashamed, because he was furious. And I lay in our bed feeling like the walls had changed, like every photo in the hallway was suddenly a prop in a story that wasn't real. The next day I met with a real estate attorney. Her office was small, neat, full of framed degrees and calm energy. Her name was Dana Pierce. She didn't flinch when I laid the certified copies on her desk. She didn't gasp. She didn't dramatize. She just adjusted her glasses, read, and then looked at me with a seriousness that made my stomach twist. If your signature was forged, she said, that quitclaim deed can be challenged. But you need proof. How? I whispered. Notary records, she said. Witnesses, handwriting analysis, anything that shows you weren't present. I swallowed. What about the deed of trust? The lien? She tapped the paper. If he used your forged joint ownership as leverage to sign this, we can challenge that too. But the lender will fight hard. They'll claim they relied in good faith on recorded title. My throat tightened. So even if it's fraud, they can still take my house? Dana's eyes stayed steady. They can try. That's why we move fast. Move fast. The same words Ethan had used, but Dana meant something different. She meant survival. She meant strategy. She meant protecting what was mine before it vanished. That week became a blur of escalation. Every 3 days, it got worse. First, a letter arrived from Ridgepoint, not addressed to me, addressed to Ethan. But it was in our mailbox, and when I opened it, my hands shook so hard I almost tore it. Final notice. Payment delinquent. My heart slammed. He hadn't even made the first month clean. He'd already missed. I confronted him as soon as he walked in. He looked tired, sweaty. His tie loosened, like a man whose story was collapsing. Why is there a delinquency notice? I demanded. He snatched the letter out of my hand. Because they're aggressive. It's a timing issue. A timing issue? I repeated. Ethan, it's month 1. He glared. I told you I'm handling it. You're not handling it, I said, voice shaking. You're drowning. His eyes flashed. Stop acting like you're better than me. I blinked. What? That's what this is, he snapped. You always wanted to be the responsible one, the safe one, the homeowner, the one with the good credit. You think that makes you superior. I stared, stunned. So this wasn't just debt. It was ego. He didn't just want the house. He wanted what it represented. Proof that he could take the thing I had and claim it as his. He leaned in. I will fix this. Do you hear me? I will. And for a second, I saw panic behind his anger. Real panic. Because if he didn't fix it, he knew exactly what would happen. A private lender didn't play. They didn't send polite reminders. They moved. 2 days later, my neighbor texted me, Hey, just a heads up. There was a guy taking pictures of your house today, in a suit, clipboard. He walked around the yard. My blood turned to ice. That wasn't a neighbor. That was an inspector. A broker price opinion. A foreclosure step. I called Dana. She didn't sound surprised. They're preparing, she said. We need to file a notice of dispute and start the fraud challenge. How long do we have? I whispered. Not much, she said, and you need to consider something else. What? If he's that deep in debt, he may file bankruptcy, she said. And if he does, the trustee could look at the house as an asset. My breath caught. Even if it's mine? If the title shows joint ownership, she said gently, they'll treat it like joint ownership until proven otherwise. Until proven otherwise. Meaning paper could steal reality. Escalation kept coming. Ethan started staying out late. He stopped eating dinner. He stopped pretending. When he did come home, he was jittery, snapping at everything, like the air itself offended him. One night, around midnight, he stumbled in smelling like whiskey. He'd never been a big drinker. That's what scared me. He dropped his laptop bag on the floor, stared at me like I was a stranger, and said, "If you tell anyone about this, you'll ruin me." I stared. "You ruined yourself." He lunged closer, eyes glassy. "No, you'll ruin me." His voice was low, dangerous in a way I hadn't seen before, and that was when I understood. Debt doesn't just take money. It takes character. It takes restraint. It turns fear into threat. I stepped back, keeping my voice steady. "I'm not here to ruin you. I'm here to save my house." He laughed bitterly. "Your house, always your house." "Yes," I said, "because you used it like a credit card." He slammed his hand against the wall, not at me, but close enough to make my body flinch. "I did what I had to do," he hissed. "You don't understand what it's like to have people calling you, threatening you, waiting outside your office." I froze. "People waited outside your office?" His expression flickered. He'd said too much. He rubbed his face. "Forget it." No, I wasn't forgetting anything now. That night I slept with my phone under my pillow. Not because I thought he would hurt me, because I thought he might do something desperate. And desperation is unpredictable. A week later, the sheriff came to my door. Not with handcuffs, with papers, a notice of trustee sale. My knees almost gave out. The sheriff's expression was the same tired look I'd seen in other people's stories, like he hated delivering these things. "Ma'am," he said gently, "this is a legal notice. There will be a sale date if it's not resolved." I took the papers with shaking hands. As soon as the door closed, I opened them. Trustee sale date, set for 32 days out. 32 days? That was the countdown. That was the cliff. Ethan wasn't home. He didn't answer my calls. When he finally called back, his voice was sharp. "What?" "The sheriff served a trustee sale notice," I said, my voice shaking. 32 days. Silence. Then he muttered, "They wouldn't." "They did," I said. "So tell me the truth, right now. How bad is it?" His breath sounded ragged. Then, quietly, he said, "I thought I could float it. Float it. Like my house was a boat, and he drilled holes in the bottom." "I need to know everything," I said, voice low. "Every debt, every lender, every lie." He didn't answer. And that silence was the answer. That's when Dana filed the first emergency motion, an action to challenge the quitclaim deed, a request for a temporary restraining order to halt the sale until fraud could be examined. It was paperwork, but it was warfare. Ethan was served. He came home that night with the papers crumpled in his fist. His eyes were wild. "You filed against me?" he shouted. "I filed for my house," I said. "You're my wife," he snapped. "You don't sue your husband." "I don't forge my wife's signature," I shot back. His face twisted. And then he did something that shocked me more than the yelling. He went still. His voice dropped. "You have no idea what you just did," he said. My skin prickled. "What does that mean?" He smiled again. But this one wasn't thin. It was ugly. Ridgepoint doesn't care about your feelings, he said softly. If you block them, they'll come harder. They'll bury you. I stared. So you partnered with a predator? He shrugged. I partnered with whoever would save me. Save me. Not save us. Not save our future. Save him. That was the moment my marriage died in my mind. Not with cheating. Not with screaming. With a sentence. He'd chosen himself, and he'd chosen my house as the price. Escalation continued. Ridgepoint's attorneys responded. They claimed good faith. They claimed reliance. They claimed that recorded title showed Ethan had an interest, and that gave him the right to pledge. Dana pushed back. We demanded the notary log. We demanded the video footage, if any existed. We demanded proof of presence. And then, like a cruel joke, the notary wrote back saying their journal had been lost in a move. Lost. I felt sick. Because lost journals don't happen by accident when fraud is involved. Dana's voice stayed calm, but her eyes sharpened. Then we build it another way, she said. Where were you on the date of notarization? In the hospital, I said, with my sister. Do you have records? She asked. I blinked. Yes, visiting logs, texts, photos. Good, she said. We subpoena. We prove you weren't present. Meanwhile, Ridgepoint scheduled the sale. They published the notice. They sent someone else to photograph the property. And the worst part was, life outside kept moving. Neighbors walked their dogs. Kids rode bikes. The world stayed bright. While my house became a target. Ethan tried a different strategy then. One night, he came home quiet. Too quiet. He cooked dinner. He poured wine. He sat across from me and said softly, "We don't have to do this the hard way." My stomach tightened. What are you talking about? He reached across the table like he was offering peace. I can fix this if you cooperate, he said. If you sign a stipulation, if you acknowledge my interest, Ridgepoint will refinance. We'll stretch the timeline. I stared. You want me to sign something? He smiled gently, just to calm them down, show unity. Unity after fraud, after lies, after the sheriff. No, I said. His smile faded. Claire, he said, using my name like a warning. If you don't sign, they will sell. You'll lose the house, too. Too? I repeated. You mean I'm supposed to accept losing it as collateral damage? He leaned in. I'm trying to save what we have. No, I said. You're trying to save what you took? His face hardened. You're being stubborn, he said. You think you're some hero. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, I think you're a thief. Silence. Then his hand slammed the table. Fine, he hissed. Then we do it your way. And he stood up, grabbed his jacket, and walked out. 2 days later, I got an email from Dana. Subject, urgent. I opened it, and my heart dropped. Ethan had filed bankruptcy. Chapter 7. Liquidation. He hadn't told me. He hadn't warned me. He'd just pulled the pin. My hands started shaking. Because bankruptcy wasn't just about his debt. It was about assets. And on paper, my house was now partially his. Dana called me immediately. Okay, she said, voice crisp. This changes the battlefield. The foreclosure and the bankruptcy will collide. What does that mean? I whispered. It means a bankruptcy trustee will step in, she said, and they will want to know what the estate owns. If the house appears jointly owned, they'll consider his share part of the estate. My throat tightened. So they can force a sale? They can try, she said, but this also creates an opening. An opening? I clung to that word. How? I asked. Because if Ethan committed fraud, Dana said, and used a forged deed to obtain credit. That's not just civil, that's criminal. And bankruptcy courts don't like fraud. My stomach churned. I didn't want to be the woman who sent her husband to jail. I wanted to be the woman who kept her home. But Ethan had already chosen war. Now I had to survive it. That was the midpoint escalation, the moment where the story stopped being marriage problem and became legal siege. The trustee requested documents. Ridgepoint filed motions. Ethan's bankruptcy attorney tried to paint me as an overreacting spouse, said I consented implicitly, said it was marital property. Dana tore that apart. We filed proof of my purchase pre-marriage. We filed bank statements showing my down payment. We filed the hospital visiting logs. We filed photos of me holding my sister's hand on the exact notarization date, time-stamped. And slowly, the narrative shifted. But Ridgepoint didn't back down. They sent a settlement offer, not to help me, to pressure me. They offered to release the lien if I paid a resolution fee, a fee big enough to hurt, a fee designed to make me choose between peace and principle. Dana's jaw tightened when she read it. "They're trying to extort you legally," she said. I swallowed hard. "If I pay it, does it end?" "It ends for them," she said, "but it rewards fraud, and it still doesn't address the forged deed." I stared at the offer, and for a moment I felt tired in my bones, because fighting costs energy, fighting costs sleep, fighting costs your appetite and your joy and your trust in the world. But then I thought of Ethan's smile, the way he'd said, "Save me," the way he'd locked his office, the way he'd tried to rewrite my memory. And something inside me steadied. "No," I said. "We don't pay them." Dana nodded. "Okay, then we push harder." Then came the twist, the real twist, the one that hit around 70% of the way through this nightmare. It wasn't about whether Ethan lied. We knew he lied. It wasn't about whether he was in debt. We knew he was drowning. The twist was about who else had been playing the game, and what Ethan had actually done to get that deed recorded. Dana's investigator got a call, a quiet call, from someone who didn't want their name used, a former assistant at the small bank branch where the notary stamp belonged. She said she recognized Ethan. She said he'd come in alone that day. She said he'd been nervous, sweating, pushing papers across the counter, and she said something else that made my blood run cold. The notary whose stamp appeared on my quitclaim deed had been Ethan's cousin. Not legally his cousin by blood, but family through marriage, close enough to come to Thanksgiving, close enough to trust, close enough to help. Dana got the personnel list. The notary name matched. And then Dana did something that felt like pulling a thread from a sweater. She filed a request with the Secretary of State's Notary Division. Public record, commission status, disciplinary actions. And the response came back like a hammer. The notary's commission had been suspended 2 months after my quitclaim deed was notarized, for improper journaling and missing signers. Missing signers. Meaning it wasn't just my deed. It was a pattern. Dana looked at me across her desk and said quietly, "This isn't sloppy. This is a fraud pipeline. A fraud pipeline." And suddenly, Ethan's calm confidence made sense. He didn't fear paperwork because he thought paperwork was a tool. He didn't fear notarization because he had a notary who would stamp whatever he needed. He didn't fear lenders because he knew how to manufacture legitimacy. My throat tightened. So he's done this before. Dana nodded. And Ridgepoint may not be innocent either. That line hit me hard because it meant the lender wasn't just predatory. They might have been complicit. Dana leaned forward. Private lenders often rely on volume. If they ignored red flags because they liked the fees, that's not good faith. The case pivoted from spouse dispute to fraud and possible lender misconduct. Dana filed a complaint with the State Attorney General's Consumer Division. She filed with the Notary Oversight Board. She filed a motion in bankruptcy court alleging fraudulent transfer and forged instruments. And then the bankruptcy trustee, the person who was supposed to collect assets for Ethan's creditors, did something shocking. They joined us. Because if the deed was forged, Ethan didn't own that interest. And if Ethan didn't own that interest, Ridgepoint's lien was weaker. And if Ridgepoint's lien was weaker, their claim in bankruptcy got threatened. So the trustee, suddenly seeing fraud, wanted to unwind it too. It was like watching predators turn on each other. Ridgepoint started to sweat. They postponed the trustee sale. Not canceled. Postponed, but it bought time. Ethan, meanwhile, lost control of his story. The bankruptcy court demanded explanations. The trustee demanded depositions. Dana demanded production. And Ethan tried to blame me. He told the court I was emotional. He told them I was trying to punish him. He told them he'd never forge anything. Then Dana slid the hospital log across the table. The timestamp, the sign-in sheet with my name, the security camera screenshot of me walking into the hospital that morning. And Ethan's face changed. Just a flicker. But I saw it. The moment he realized evidence doesn't care about charm. Then came the deposition. I sat in a conference room under fluorescent lights while a court reporter typed every word. Ethan sat across from me, suit pressed, hair perfect, trying to look like the same confident man who once said, "We're a team." Dana asked him, slow and calm, "Were you present with Claire Bennett when the quitclaim deed was signed?" "Yes," he said. Dana didn't flinch. "Where?" "At our house," he said. Dana nodded. "At what time?" He hesitated. "Midday." Dana slid the hospital record forward. Claire was at Mercy General Hospital at 12:07 p.m. and remained until 4:42 p.m. that day. Please explain. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted. He swallowed. "It must be a different day," he said. Dana's voice stayed soft. "The deed is dated and notarized that day." Silence. Dana then asked, "Are you aware the notary commission used on this deed was later suspended for missing signers?" Ethan's jaw tightened. Dana asked, "Are you aware the notary is connected to you socially?" Ethan snapped, "I don't know what you're implying." Dana leaned back. "I'm implying you recorded a forged deed to create the appearance of ownership, so you could pledge a home you did not have rights to pledge, to cover personal debts you concealed from your spouse." The room felt like it shrank. Ethan's face went red. He looked at me then, not like a husband, but like an enemy. And in that look I saw something else. Fear. Because his web wasn't just messy, it was criminal. Ridgepoint tried to salvage. They offered a new deal. They would release their deed of trust if I signed a new note. In my name. To replace Ethan's. Meaning they wanted to transfer his debt onto me. Dana laughed when she read it. Not a happy laugh. A sharp one. "They're trying to launder fraud into your signature," she said. I stared at the offer and felt a strange calm, because now I knew. Now I understood the game. They didn't want justice. They wanted a clean debtor. They wanted me. And I was done being useful. We rejected it. Dana filed a counterclaim. We alleged fraudulent inducement. We alleged negligent underwriting. We alleged slander of title. We demanded damages and removal. And the bankruptcy trustee, seeing the mess, moved to deny Ethan's discharge because of fraud, meaning his debts might not even be wiped, meaning his attempt to escape could backfire. That's when the power started shifting. Not all at once. In steps, in papers, in court orders. The judge in bankruptcy court was a woman with silver hair and a voice that didn't rise. She looked at Ethan and said, "Mr. Caldwell, bankruptcy is a privilege. It is not a shelter for fraud." Ethan tried to argue. He tried to say it was a misunderstanding. The judge didn't care. She ordered an independent forensic document examination, handwriting analysis, ink comparison, signature comparison. It took weeks where I lived with the uncertainty, but now the uncertainty was shared. Ethan couldn't sleep. He started calling me late at night, leaving voicemails, crying sometimes, then angry. "Claire, please, we can fix this." Then, "You're ruining my life." Then, "If I go down, you go down." I saved every voicemail, every threat, every plea, because Dana had told me something early on, and it stuck. "People reveal themselves when they panic," she'd said. "Collect the proof." The forensic report came back, and it was clean, clear, devastating. The signature on the quitclaim deed was not mine. It was a simulation, a practiced imitation, likely traced or copied from another document. My hands shook when Dana showed me. Not because I doubted anymore, because it made it official. It turned my gut feeling into a weapon. Dana filed it. The judge read it. And Ridgepoint's entire good faith reliance argument cracked. Because good faith relies on legitimacy, and legitimacy doesn't survive a forged deed. Ridgepoint suddenly wanted to settle. Not with a fee. With retreat. They offered to release the lien entirely, to record a reconveyance, and to walk away if we dismissed claims. Dana looked at me. This was the moment, the easy win, the end of the immediate threat. But I thought of the sheriff's notice, the inspector in my yard, the sleepless nights, and I thought of all the other people who probably didn't have a Dana Pierce, who didn't have hospital logs, who didn't have the luck of a suspended notary record. I swallowed. "No," I said. "They don't just walk away. They harmed me." Dana nodded slowly. "Then we negotiate from power." Power reversal doesn't always look like a dramatic courtroom speech. Sometimes it looks like leverage. Dana demanded damages, attorney's fees, a formal admission of error, a release that included an agreement not to report negative credit information tied to the lien. Ridgepoint resisted, then caved, because the judge was watching, because the trustee was watching, because the attorney general complaint was in motion, because they didn't want discovery, didn't want their files opened, didn't want to reveal how many fast, flexible loans were built on shaky paperwork. They signed, the lien was released, the trustee sale was canceled, and a new document recorded in county records. Quiet title, action pending, fraud alleged, a warning flag, public, permanent until resolved. Then we went after the quitclaim deed. Dana filed to void it, to restore title solely to me, to remove Ethan completely. The court scheduled a hearing. Ethan showed up with a new lawyer, a slick man who spoke fast, trying to paint Ethan as misguided, not malicious. Dana didn't get emotional. She got precise. She showed the forensic report. She showed the hospital logs. She showed the notary suspension. She played Ethan's voicemail where he said, "If I go down, you go down." The judge's expression didn't change much, But her eyes sharpened. And then she said the words that felt like sunlight. This deed is void. Void. Not questionable. Not disputed. Void. She ordered the county recorder to strike it. She ordered title restored. She ordered Ethan to pay a portion of my legal fees, and she referred the matter to the district attorney's office for review of potential forgery and filing false instruments. Ethan's face drained. He looked like a man who had spent years building a lie, only to watch it collapse in one sentence. That was the power reversal. Not because I'd won in some flashy way, because the system finally saw what he did and then named it. He didn't get to say it was just paperwork anymore. It was fraud. It was theft. It was criminal. After the hearing, Ethan cornered me in the hallway. His eyes were bloodshot. His voice shook. "You really did it," he whispered. I stared at him, and I realized I didn't feel love. I didn't feel hate. I felt distance, like he was someone I used to know. "You did it," I said softly. "I just stopped you." He swallowed hard. I was desperate. "So was I said, but I didn't steal." He flinched like I'd slapped him. Then he hissed, "You think you're safe now?" I met his eyes, calm. Yes. Because my name was back where it belonged. Because the lien was gone. Because the quitclaim deed was void. Because the bankruptcy trustee had moved to deny his discharge, and his creditors were circling, and he no longer had my house to hide behind. He walked away. And I watched him go, not with heartbreak, but with something that felt like a door closing. The last 10% of the story wasn't court. It was cleanup. It was me changing every password, me opening a new bank account, me freezing my credit, me installing a new mailbox lock, me learning what it meant to live without pretending. Ethan's bankruptcy case unraveled. The trustee found more inconsistencies, more missing records, more questionable transfers. His discharge was denied, meaning his debts remained, meaning the escape hatch he'd tried to use became a trap. Then came the final twist of karma, quiet but satisfying. One of Ethan's biggest creditors filed a civil suit. They subpoenaed records, and because the court had already determined fraud in my case, Ethan's credibility was ash. He tried to negotiate. They didn't care. They got a judgment. His wages were garnished. His business accounts were frozen. And the man who once smiled while he locked me out of his office now had to ask permission to buy groceries. Months later, I stood in my living room on a bright afternoon. The same sun still hit the hardwood at 4 p.m. But the light felt different now. Not because the house changed, because I did. I had new documents in my binder, certified copies showing me as sole owner, a recorded reconveyance removing Ridgepoint's lien, a court order voiding the fraudulent deed, paper finally matching reality. My phone chimed again. Another county alert. New document recorded. I opened it calmly. Order recorded. Quiet title granted. I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for months. And for the first time in a long time, my home felt like mine again. Not just because the law said so, but because I had learned the hardest lesson of my life. Trust isn't something you give once. It's something someone earns. Every day. By telling you the truth. Even when it's ugly. Even when it costs them pride. Even when it would be easier to hide. Ethan had used my house to cover his debts. He thought paper could rewrite ownership. He thought marriage meant access. He thought I'd stay quiet. Because quiet women are convenient. But when the sheriff came, when the notices stacked, when the predators circled, I didn't fold. I didn't beg. I didn't sign a new lie to clean up his old one. I became the one thing he couldn't refinance, my certainty. And in the end, the house didn't cover his debts. His debts exposed him. They stripped the charm. They tore off the team language. They revealed the man underneath, a man who would sacrifice the roof over my head to save his own skin. And when the papers were finally recorded, when the lien was finally gone, when the title was finally clean, I stood on my porch with the keys warm in my palm, and I realized something simple. A home is not just wood and paint and a mortgage statement. A home is the place where you should feel safe, and anyone who uses your safety as collateral doesn't deserve the door.